Can you come inside with me today? Sophie squeezed Ethan's hand tighter as they walked toward her school. Inside my classroom. My friends, they keep saying I don't have a dad. But if they see you, they'll know. You can smile. You don't have to talk if it's weird. Ethan looked down at her, heart tightening. You want me to be your dad at school? She nodded. Just until recess. Then you can go back to being a CEO. At the school gate, Sophie's golden curls bounced as she ran up to her classmates. This is my dad. He wears a suit, fixes broken toys, and he even knows how to make cupcakes. The kids stared. A small voice whispered, "Cool." Sophie beamed and skipped into the classroom, waving goodbye to Ethan. He stood frozen, his heart pounding in a rhythm it hadn't known before. For the first time, someone was proud to call him Dad. Later that morning, Rachel Bennett stared at the contact labeled Ethan Carter on her phone. Her thumb hovered over the green call button. She had typed and erased the message 3 times. In the background, Sophie bounced on the couch, clutching her stuffed giraffe. Cupcakes with mommy and daddy like a family, she chanted. Rachel exhaled and pressed call. That afternoon, Ethan arrived at their small apartment with a grocery bag full of cake mix. I'm not great in the kitchen, he admitted as Rachel opened the door. They're just cupcakes, she said softly. Sophie cares more about licking the spoon anyway. The apartment smelled faintly of vanilla and lavender. Sophie had already arranged bowls on the table, flour dusting the surface like snow. Let's make chocolate, she declared, handing Ethan a whisk. Mommy, you're going to help too, right? Rachel started to decline, but Sophie grabbed her hand. Come on, we're a team. Half an hour later, flour was everywhere, on the floor, on their shirts, even on Ethan's tie. Sophie laughed so hard she leaned against the counter, and Ethan, with a smear of chocolate on his cheek, gasped, "Oh no, chocolate attack." Rachel couldn't help herself. She laughed, truly laughed, the kind of laughter that shakes loose years of worry. She watched Ethan, once a polished CEO, now messy, alive, and fully present. He caught her gaze, soft eyes, crooked smile, no defenses. For the first time in a long while, he felt like he belonged. Later, after dinner, Rachel changed into a sweatshirt, and the 3 of them settled into Sophie's bedroom. Sophie lay in the middle of the bed, stuffed animals forming a protective circle around her. Ethan sat on one side, Rachel on the other. A storybook opened on Ethan's lap, his voice booming with drama. Rachel joined in with playful character voices, making Sophie clap and giggle. Halfway through, Sophie whispered, half asleep, "I wish Daddy wasn't just for one day." Ethan froze. The only sound was the hum of the bedside lamp. Rachel tucked Sophie in, brushing curls from her face. Sophie's tiny hand clutched Ethan's sleeve. He sat back down, not as a guest, but as someone who had been quietly welcomed into something fragile and real. After Sophie drifted into sleep, Ethan and Rachel stepped onto the porch with mugs of warm tea. Silence stretched between them, comfortable and steady. Finally, Ethan said, "When I was a kid, I wished my dad would draw with me, walk me to class, just be there. All he taught me was how to win." He paused, looking at Rachel. Sophie gave me the chance to do all the things I never got to. Not as a CEO, not for anyone's approval, just as her dad. Rachel's eyes shimmered. Ethan quietly stepped back inside Sophie's room later, brushing a curl from her sleeping face. "I'm not going anywhere, kiddo. Not unless you want me to," he whispered. Thursdays became routine. Sophie wore her favorite dresses, and Ethan packed her lunches, jelly sandwiches, a juice box, and a note. "You're brave. I love you, Dad." She tucked it in her backpack like treasure. One afternoon, Rachel rushed to school after a call. Sophie was crying outside the office, teased by other kids who claimed Ethan wasn't her real dad. Ethan knelt beside her, holding her tiny hands. "No," he said, voice steady. "I'm not going anywhere, Em. Even if you cry, mess up, or spill juice. I'm still your dad. Because being your dad isn't about being perfect. It's about staying, and I'm staying." Sophie leaned into him, trust radiating from every line of her small body. Rachel, watching from above, felt something shift. Maybe this time, it was real. Evenings were quiet, filled with crayons, bedtime stories, and whispered dreams. Sophie drew stick figures on notepads, labeled them family. Nathan, Ethan, now, brushed curls from her face. Rachel watched, heart softening. This wasn't about perfection, it was about presence. Weeks later, Ethan brought up the idea of a bigger home. It's not about being a boyfriend, he said. It's about a life I can't imagine without you both. Rachel hesitated, then looked at Sophie's crayon drawing. What does the pink room look like? Skylight, enough space for a stuffed giraffe collection, Ethan replied. Rachel laughed. She has 3 already. The move happened quietly. Mornings were pancakes, evenings storybooks. Ethan learned how to braid doll hair, sing off-key, hold Sophie's tiny hand. Nights, he fell asleep on the couch with her sprawled across him, both covered in cookie crumbs and crayon marks. Rachel watched and smiled. This was real. One afternoon, during a small garden picnic, Sophie handed Ethan a crayon-colored note. Dear Daddy, I don't need to hire a daddy anymore. I just want you forever. Ethan froze, breath caught. He looked at Rachel, then knelt on one knee. I know I came into your lives by accident. But if you'll let me, I want to be your family, not for a day, but for as long as you'll have me. Rachel's hands trembled. I was never waiting for perfect, she whispered. I was waiting for real. Yes, Ethan said. Yes. Sophie squealed, spinning in delight, throwing herself into their embrace. Laughter and warmth filled the garden. Their shadows stretched long in the golden light, 3 hearts no longer broken but whole. A new chapter had begun, a life built not on money or chance, but on love, choice, and the courage to stay. Here's all I have, $50. I just need a dad for one day. Sophie's tiny voice trembled, but carried a seriousness far beyond her 4 years. Ethan Carter blinked at the little girl standing before him on the empty park path. He was 30, impeccably dressed, every stitch of his navy suit precise, his shoes polished to a mirror shine. But none of that mattered now. His hands were stuffed in his pockets, shoulders slumped under an invisible weight. The funeral had been hours ago. His father's casket gone. No tears, no embrace, just the hollow echo of boardroom condolences. Sophie stepped closer, holding out a small, glitter-covered wallet made from cardboard. I saved it. Tooth Fairy, birthdays, even coins I found in the couch. Ethan swallowed, voice rough. Why do you need a dad? Sophie perched on the bench next to him, as though she had known him all her life. The kids at the playground keep saying it. Sophie doesn't have a dad, they laugh. I thought maybe, if I have $50, someone could pretend. Just for today. You know, like in the commercials, the dad buys ice cream, pushes you on the swing, holds your hand. Ethan's chest tightened. He remembered standing 7, clutching his backpack, watching fathers lift their children, wondering if anyone would ever notice him. You don't need to pay me, he said finally, soft. He closed her cardboard wallet, letting it rest on his lap. Sophie's face lit up. Really? You'll be my dad. For today, he smiled. Ice cream first. Vanilla with sprinkles for Sophie, a coffee for himself. She chattered endlessly. Her cat, her stuffed animals, the zoo she wanted to run one day. Ethan listened, laughed at her jokes, felt his heart unclench with every giggle. The playground became their kingdom. Ethan pushed her on the swing, guided her down slides, helped her climb the jungle gym. Sophie called him Dad, so casually it made his chest ache with longing he didn't know he still carried. He snapped a photo with her on the merry-go-round, 3 more at her insistence. She giggled, arms around his neck, trusting him completely. Late afternoon, they sat beneath a sprawling oak. Sophie leaned against him, tiny shoulder pressed to his arm. I've never had this much fun. You're a good dad, even for one day. Thanks, kiddo, Ethan whispered. As the sun dipped low, Sophie led him down a quiet street lined with modest houses. This is our house, she said, pointing. Rachel Bennett, Sophie's mother, paused on the porch, hand gripping the doorframe. Her eyes widened at the sight of the stranger in a suit holding her daughter's hand. Mommy, this is my dad, Sophie said, proud. Just for today? I paid him $50. Rachel's lips parted, words failing. Ethan stepped forward, sincere. I didn't take the money. She offered it, but I just wanted her to be safe and happy. My name is Ethan Carter. I run a tech company downtown. Here's my card. No expectations, I promise. He retreated, leaving Rachel frozen. Sophie tugged her inside, pointing at the phone screen. There they were, laughing, ice cream smeared, arms entwined, pure joy in every frame. Rachel sank onto the couch, tears spilling silently. That night, as Rachel tucked Sophie into bed, The girl clutched her favorite stuffed animal, phone still open to the photos. "Good night, Mommy." "Good night, Daddy," she murmured. Rachel sat quietly, brushing a curl from her daughter's forehead, letting the tears fall. Ethan sat in his high-rise office the next morning, the city sprawling below him, but the numbers, the calls, the meetings, they were meaningless now. He reached for the photo Sophie insisted on taking, her laughter frozen in the frame. Maybe some things weren't about business, profit, or control. Some things were about being there. Really there. By mid-morning, he found himself in front of Rachel's small home. The door opened before he could knock. Sophie's curls bounced as she ran into his arms. "Can you take me to school, Daddy?" Ethan bent down to tie her mismatched shoes, adjusting the tiny laces into a makeshift knot. He brushed a stray curl from her face and straightened her little hat. "Yes, kiddo. Let's go," he said. And for the first time in years, Ethan felt like he was exactly where he was supposed to be.